Hello, everyone. It was good seeing you this past Tuesday live, where we ended the session talking about values. One value that was important to you, whether it was individualism, freedom, equality, and I assigned to you the homework assignment where you're looking at that list that Robin Williams put together. It was also added to regarding values in society today, U.S. society. You're drawing images of two values that are most important to you. No artistic requirement. I cannot draw to save my life. But please make sure you have that submitted by tomorrow, as well as explaining in paragraph form why those values are important to you. So, leading into what we're going to discuss here, we're going to talk about change. And there's a saying that I heard years ago, and it goes something like this: that there's nothing permanent in life except change. That there's nothing permanent in life except change. And if you think about that for a moment, if you are a senior, next year you're going to be experiencing a tremendous amount of change. Whether you're going to be going out of state to college, or staying in state, or you're going to be doing something totally different. If you're a junior next year, of course, there's going to be a tremendous amount of change. And if we think about our society in general, what has happened with COVID-19, there's of course been a significant amount of change. And you think about how life was by the middle of March, it seemed everything was normal. And the way things are right now in our society culturally, about getting back to some of the things that we were just used to before the outbreak of this virus. So, in keeping in mind this idea of change, what I would like to discuss with you are three reasons why culture changes. And as I bring up the presentation, you'll see all the information, the three reasons in front of you. And I think it's straightforward to at least understand. It could actually be put into the idea of did, discovery, invention, and diffusion. When we think of discovering in regards to cultural change, it's really the process of finding something that already exists, that is somewhere in our culture, in our society. We think for female athletic ability, we've always in our society, in our culture, knew that females were athletic. But the problem being was this: in the 1960s and the 1970s, you really did not see much in terms of recognition of female athletic ability. If you go into the MRC of the school, you go through some of the old yearbooks of the high school, you will see for the most part it's all male dominated in terms of sports on the high school level. We did have cheerleading, of course, but what happens is that there is federal legislation that is passed in the 1970s known as Title IX. And I'm going to talk more about this with you on Tuesday, but it was the idea of at least offering equal opportunity to both males and females. That you had to have the same type of locker rooms, that you had to have almost the equal amount of offerings in terms of sports when it came to both men and women. Now, there is a lot of positive with Title IX, which I just mentioned. There is some drawbacks, and I'll give you some information about that when we meet Tuesday. But I always like to bring up Title IX because, again, in reference to discovery and cultural change, we've always known that females are athletic. It was just discovering it and recognizing it, and I think we've done that, at least through Title IX today. The second reason for cultural change is invention, which is the creation of something that is totally new, the society has never seen before. And I'm sure you could think of examples in your own minds. I have this one example that I'll bring up here. This is a Segway. This is a genuine invention. This was the creation of something new that could be charged through batteries. It could be folded up, put in backpacks. It could go 15, 20 miles an hour. And funny with the Segway when it came out, is that people were riding it on the sidewalks and going about 15, 20 miles an hour, actually running over people with it. Again, we'll talk more about this on Tuesday, but the Segway is an example of an invention. It's the creation of something new. And the last reason for cultural change has to do with diffusion, the word diffusion, diffuse, which is the borrowing of aspects or certain ideas of a culture and bringing it to other cultures. And of course, again, we could run through our mind if we think about food. We could think about pizza, Chinese food, Thai food. We can also think, I don't know if you've heard of the bento box, okay, all right, which is the idea of Japanese cuisine, sushi. I don't know if you've had that. But that's, again, another example of borrowing an idea from another culture and making it part of our own culture. So these are the three reasons why cultural changes. Again, there is nothing permanent except change, discovery, invention, and diffusion. Now, what you're going to see here, and what I'm going to talk about on Tuesday, is the idea of social categories. Why are social categories so important in American culture? Why is it important, at least what I'm asking here, to categorize people socially as well as economically, to group people according to certain categories? If you could think for a moment for Sparta, New Jersey, socioeconomically, what really is Sparta, New Jersey? Is it primarily upper class? Is it middle to upper class? Is it middle class? Is it lower class, lower middle class? And I think with any type of society, any type of town, you're going to see all these social categories. So I think it's important to think about here for a moment. When we think about culture, when we think about the idea of social categories, I'll bring up a couple of terms that I'd like for you to consider. The first one, which I'm sure that you've heard, is again the term social categories, which is the groupings of persons, people who share a certain social characteristic. Now, a social characteristic could be age, could be one, religion could be another, economically, education, interests. So social categories are the groupings of people who share a certain definitive, identifiable social characteristic. Now, if we take culture one step further, we look at the term subculture. A subculture is a group that is part of the dominant culture. They function within society, but they differ in some important respects. And again, there's many examples of subcultures in our society. And when we talk on Tuesday, I'll provide you with examples of them. Two that I have here, and maybe you have heard of this sport or activity called parkour. And maybe you have owned a pogo stick at one time. Yes, there are a group of people who partake in extreme pogo. They are two examples of subcultures, both in American society and in the world as well. And what you probably also have heard about is this term known as counterculture, which is a subculture deliberately and consciously opposed to certain central beliefs or attitudes of the dominant culture. Countercultures, if we think about historically, if we think about what took place in the 1960s with the hippies, people would say that that is an example of a counterculture. If you want to think about sovereign citizens, are they an example of a counterculture in American society today? If you want another example, the Amish. If you've seen the Amish, if you've gone to parts of Pennsylvania are the Amish part of a counterculture in American society today because they don't believe in electricity? We'll talk about their beliefs regarding education. Can we look at the Amish as being a counterculture in American society today? And the last term here that I want to discuss with you has to deal with a judgment on your mind. And the idea is judging people based on your own cultures, and that is something of the term known as ethnocentrism. Being ethnocentric, judging others in terms of one's own cultural standards, using your own culture as a yardstick to judge others. I don't know where you have been in American society or in the world. Maybe you have been in a situation where you've seen something that's odd, out of the ordinary regarding the culture, and the reason why is because you're using your own personal culture to judge that culture. You're being ethnocentric. And there's many examples that we could think of, and again, I'd like to discuss that in terms of your own personal experiences, if you've ever had a moment of being ethnocentric. So this is the information that I have for you through this screencast right now. Remember what I said at the beginning here, that there is nothing permanent in life except change. And there are 3 reasons why culture changes, and that has to do with discovery, diffusion, and before that, invention, as well as thinking about the term social categories, why we group people today in terms of age, religion, race, their education, hobbies, interests, as well as the other 3 terms: subculture, part of the dominant culture, a counterculture, deliberately and consciously opposed to the dominant culture. We could debate the idea of the Amish, and of course the last one I just talked about here, being ethnocentric, using your culture as a yardstick to judge others. And of course we cannot deny that we judge others based on what we have experienced, what we know. If you have any questions, tomorrow I'm available for office hours. If not, I hope you're staying safe, and I hope to see you on Tuesday. Bye-bye.